Greetings, pop pickers. June 18th, 2022 marked an almost surreal, to me, momentous milestone in rock, as it was the day that Paul McCartney turned 80 years old. 80. With Ringo Starr soon to celebrate his 82nd birthday, nothing could bring home the passage of time to me more than those two Beatles entering what is still viewed as the era of old age. Those once youthful fab lads have come a long way since those black and white days, and Paul's birthday has particularly got me reflective, as I've always been a huge McCartney fan all my life, warts and all. My earliest music memory is of stopping to really listen to Penny Lane playing on the radio as a 5-year-old kid, and really listening as opposed to the music just being on a radio in the background. And as I grew older and entered the more formative years in the 1970s, Paul, as a solo artist, was straddling the rock and pop world like a colossus. So the Beatles and Paul have literally, not figuratively, formed a soundtrack to my life. I've owned, collected and listened to many McCartney records and travelled across countries to go to amazing gigs which have given me enduring memories. And despite the thumbs aloft, cardigan-wearing, frog-singing, ballad-duetting flaws, there is no denying Paul's legacy as a composer, performer, world's best Little Richard impersonator, and one of the greatest bass players ever. And many of his songs, both with the Beatles and after, will live on as the classics of our time, to be played through unknown eras in the future. So, to celebrate Paul's birthday, I'd like to present my 10 favourite Paul McCartney albums. I have excluded Beatles albums, compilations and live albums. And also, many of my favourite McCartney songs do not feature on these albums, but I wanted to focus just on the long players today. And there will be a few unusual choices here alongside the better known ones. So at number 10, Thrillington, under the name of Percy Thrills Thrillington, and undoubtedly the most unusual album on this list, and in Macca's entire oeuvre. In fact, most casual fans would not even be aware this album exists. Originally recorded in 1971 but shelved till 1977, this is an entirely instrumental version of the Ram album, and it's got lots of great orchestrations, jazzy horns and swinging background vocals, and I find it a ton of fun. I'd love to just stick it on in the background and let it roll. It's great fun. At number 9, McCartney. Paul's debut solo album, and one of the first examples of what would now be called lo-fi. Released in April 1970 during the turbulent final official days of the Beatles, this rough and ready gem was recorded entirely by Paul on home equipment with some backing vocals from Linda. Now, it may be rough, but it contains gems like Maybe I'm Amazed, Teddy Boy, and the beautiful and wistful Junk and Every Night. And it really is an album that, although derided at the time for its lo-fi approach, was a bit of a forerunner, and was the sort of thing that, if released by an artist today, would be praised. At number 8, Venus and Mars by Wings. So released in May 1975, Venus and Mars found Macca firmly in the middle of Wings' arena-filling rock stardom period. They launched a year-long world tour on the back of this album, as seen by many as inferior to its blockbuster predecessor Band on the Run. I've always had a huge affection for this album. Some dislike its variety, but I love it. For me, it's a brilliant pop-rock mix which contains the infectious and optimistic Listen to What the Man Said, pop classic in my opinion, alongside bombastic arena rock opener Venus and Mars Rock Show, the Lennon pastiche Letting Go, and the soulful Call Me Back Again. So to me, it's a fun and varied delight in my view, and showcases Wings at the time's great delightful pop rock. At number 7, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Macca is not always known for being introspective and intimate, at least not over an entire album, but that's exactly the feeling that he achieves on this 2005 album produced by Nigel guy. Now, Nigel would be a different guy, Nigel Godrich. Indeed, some of his finest lyrics are to be heard on this album as he eschews silliness and puns for some serious reflection and lyrical ambiguity on a par with someone like Ray Davies or Nick Lowe. Macca plays almost all the instruments and seems to have allowed Godrich, who's known for his work with Beck and Radiohead, to exert full production control and quality control. And it's a subtle and surprising album. It's full of beauty. And it showcases what Paul can do when he's really pushed by a collaborator, in this case Godrich. At number 6, Back to the Egg by Wings. So at number 6, I returned to Macca's other band, Wings. And in fact, he was in a band before Wings, which not a lot of people knew. And the final album from that band released in 1979. So Back to the Egg had new members, Lawrence Juber and Steve Hawley, added. And they added a bit of youthful vigour. And Macca himself attempted to add a touch of new wave spunk to the music. And there's some great McCartney bass moments on this album, I find. So generally looked down on by critics and largely forgotten by many, this album for me is, again, it's a lot of fun and is perhaps Macca's peak power pop album. It's got some major power pop chops on it, in fact. Songs like Getting Closer, Spin It On, Old Siam Sir, To You, and the 2 Rockestra tracks. And it's also got my favourite Denny Lane Wings track again and again and again. And some beautifully sung Macca ballads and a soulful Arrow Through Me with a great vocal. So again, for me, the key is fun. Macca, to me, sounds like he's having a lot of fun making this album, and I enjoy it immensely. So at number 5 is the album Electric Arguments by The Firemen. So it's another collaboration this time, and for some years Macca had an unacknowledged side project called The Firemen with former Killing Joke bassist and top producer Youth. And 2 albums of mainly dance-oriented instrumentals gave way to this 2008 third album, Electric Arguments. And this time both artists acknowledged the project, and the instrumentals gave way to a more standard set of rock vocal tracks. And it does have some exceptionally strong McCartney songs in it. Upbeat anthemic songs like Sing the Changes and Sun is Shining are among the best songs McCartney has ever written and performed. And the whole album is fresh and inspiring. It's really a delight, a hidden delight for those who don't know of Macca's side projects. Number 4 is Band on the Run, again by Wings. A commercial and critical watershed of Paul's post-Beatles career. This is an album that has stood the test of time and also has one of the best-known album covers in rock. And for me, it's, along with like Venus and Mars, it's got that fantastic era of Wings where Macca was really using the Rickenbacker bass as opposed to the old Hofner. And I love that Rickenbacker bass, really. It really has a thumping bass sound to it. Absolutely brilliant. It was recorded in fraught circumstances in Nigeria by the slimmed-down Wings of just Macca, Denny Lane and Linda. But this album sounds great. It's got power pop anthems like the title track and Jet. It's got the beautiful Bluebird. It's got jangly pop classic No Words. And my favourite on the album, the piano-pounding rocker 1985. It's a timeless classic and will be played for many decades to come, I would imagine. At number 3 is Ram, and by Paul and Linda McCartney, the only album to be so titled. And released in May 1971, this album was credited to the two of them, and it moved away a little bit from the lo-fi of his debut album, with more structured songs and a more polished production, yet it still retained a very indie pop feel. It's got pop, country, folky, rockers, and it's just got plain quirky songs in it. But for me, it all hangs together, and it's a really charming collection of songs. It's the sound of a man finding his feet after the traumatic end of the Fab Four. Harder rockers such as Too Many People and Smile Away sit nicely alongside the polished pop of Another Day and Heart of the Country. And it also contains my all-time favourite post-Beatles Macca song, The Joyful Mastery of The Backseat of My Car. It's an album that charmed the hell out of me when I first heard it, and it still does today. So at number 2 is Run Devil Run. Now, for a guy who cut his teeth playing ballsy rock and roll in the dank clubs of Liverpool and Hamburg, Paul does his best to avoid rocking out a lot of the time. And yet he's so good at it, with a fantastic rock and roll voice and a killer bass playing. So when he does do it, as on the 1999's Run Devil Run, it's an absolute joy. He'd previously done a set of old rock and roll songs in the 1988 Russian album, which was good, but Run Devil Run is in a class of its own. It's superlative. He's got a great set of musicians, including Dave Gilmour, Mick Green, Ian Pace, and Pete Wingfield. And the album contains a mix of obscure rockers and well-known covers and 3 excellent originals. There's a little bit of Zydeco, a little bit of country, a couple of ballads, but it's mostly high-powered, ferocious at times rock and roll. Storming tracks such as All Shook Up, Honey Hush, and Party just slay it. And for one glorious album, Macca once again became Britain's king rocker. It's my second favourite non-Beatles Macca album, and it just blows me away every time I listen to it. So at number 1 is Flaming Pie. Released in 1997 and written and recorded in the wake of the Beatles anthology, Flaming Pie is one of the best albums of any period of Paul's career and contains some of his best songs ever. In fact, I'd go as far to suggest that it's a pop rock classic and certainly one of the best albums of the late 20th century. So by this time, the cheesy singles and the pop duets were a distant memory. This is the sound of a master songwriter and performer at work. There's a seriousness about the work in hand which bleeds through into the music, with Thumbs Aloft Macca nowhere in sight. That doesn't mean it's grim though, as it's infused with songs full of hope and warmth. Jeff Lynne produces many of the tracks, and Steve Miller collaborates on the superb bluesy rocker Used to Be Bad. Honestly, I don't think there's anything that's less than 100% excellent on this album. In particular, I dearly love the song Beautiful Night with Ringo on the drums. When Macca's vocal kicks into the chorus with the George Martin orchestration behind him, it gives me chills. You gotta have this album, even if you own nothing else by Paul McCartney. This one is a classic. So, there it is, my top 10 favourite Maccas. Happy birthday, Sir Paul. Thank you for all the music. Thank you all for listening to this video and watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing, and until next time, keep on rocking.